Time for another run at the loops. So I've already created a project called effectively loop list, and it's just a normal VB project, and I've got a couple of items here already set. I don't have any code yet, but we're going to go ahead and add some of that here soon. I've got a list box, which is just essentially list values, LST values. I've got some boxes here. A maximum number, which I just called text max, and a minimum number, which I just called text min. Two buttons, button reset, button loop. And that is essentially it, along with the two little labels here, which I didn't bother to name, honestly, because I'm not really going to use them for anything. So I have a loop and a reset. I'm going to double click my loop. Now what we're going to create here is a program that's going to loop and display some things on the screen. So I've got this minimum number and maximum number here, right? So what we're going to do is take those numbers and use them to display things on the screen. So if I say 10 to 20, it should display, you know, blah, 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 10, 11, 12, all the way to 20. So hence the minimum maximum number here. So let's take a quick look here. When I click on button loop, I'm going to get a couple of variables here. Begin and an end variable. Yep. Alright, and they're green because I'm not using them yet. That's perfectly fine. So equals, first things first, I want to get the value that's in the minimum box. I'm going to make sure to convert it first, just in case this will convert it to an integer. And I'll do the same thing for the end. txt max dot text. There we go. Alright, and once I have that, I know the start point, I know the end point. Now, first things first, or I guess it's the second thing now, we're going to go ahead and make a loop. And my loop is going to, you know, start at count, and goes, or I should say, starts at the begin value, and ends at the end value. Value, there we go. So we'll zoom in a little bit so everybody can see that. There we go. So, first, that's out of the way, so now it's time to see the actual loop. Now, I'm going to use a for loop this time. For int count equals int begin to int end. Now the int count is essentially just where the starting point is going to be. I don't want to change the begin, so if I start at 10, then this should start at 10, and I'm going to go until I get to 20. Now if we were using a while loop, I'd have to have a counter in here that would go up. It would be this thing here that would go up. Since it's a for loop, that pretty much goes up automatically. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could do this here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and find it up here. So, let's see what we got here. We're going to go ahead and say list values dot items. So we're going to add an item to the list. Dot add, and I'm going to say number and let's see, where were we at? Int count and squared value. We're going to also do a little bit of math here just because. And int count. So what's going to happen is if I say 1 to 2, for example, this list value will start at 1, and it's going to say number 1, and the squared value is 1 times 1 is 1. 2 is the end value, so number 2, and the squared value would be 2 up to 2, which would be 4, right? So that's essentially all this is going to do. When I click the button, it should add that or show that to the list. So let's take a look, and as per usual on my system, I'm sure my virus scanner will be offended ever so briefly, but then, you know, we should be able to take care of it here in just a second. And there's the offense. Now it's back. Okay, so minimum number 1, maximum number 5. Loop, let's see what happens. Well, number 1, 1. Number 2, 4. 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared. Now if I hit it again, though, watch what happens. Oh, it just adds more to my list, because I'm not resetting it every single time. That's why we have this button here, actually. Now I could reset this. I'll double click on that. I could come up here and just, you know, set everything to blank. After this thing is finished, I could do that. But we have a button for this. Now I could go through and basically do all this code again. Copy paste. And instead of doing this, I could just say list.items.remove at 0. And what that will do is it'll loop through the list and then to the topmost thing. Yeah. Apparently stuff is falling off my desk here. Yeah. Don't know why that is, but okay. Well, anyway, as I was saying, this will remove the topmost item on that list. So if we go back and take a look at this real quick, and I say, you know, 1 to 5, I loop. The topmost item is here. This is slot 0. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. If I hit reset, what this loop is going to do is it's going to start at the beginning, and it's going to just take the first one off. Then this is the 0 position. Take that one off. This is the 0. This is the 0. This is the 0. And essentially reset that box. Now this is kind of a long way to do it. I don't necessarily have to do all this here. We could just comment all this out. And I could just do this instead. List values.items.clear. One line of code. Let's bring this back down. Let's go with 20 to 30. Loop. Reset. And there we go. Now if I hit loop several times, it's just going to keep adding it. If I wanted it to do something different every single time, I could just include this, you know, probably up here somewhere. But I'm going to leave it as it is for now, because I've got a button that resets it anyway. So I could do all this and loop through and remove the top item at once, and sometimes that might be what you want to do. Maybe you don't want to, you know, clear out the entire list. Maybe you actually want to go in and just remove them one at a time, and maybe look at each item because you're looking for something specific or something. You want to move it over somewhere else. Then this might be what you want to do. Now, of course, the list has a whole bunch of other things you can do too. Values dot items dot. I can see how many items are in there. I can copy things. I can get counts, I can insert things, I can get indexes of certain things, like where it's located. I can even remove certain things and find certain things. So I could use any of those items too. One thing about programming is there's always multiple ways to do pretty much the same thing. Some are shorter, some are longer, some make no sense at all, but they still work for some reason. And others, can be nice and concise. It just depends on your skill, your personality, and how much experience you have at doing things. I always tell people in my advanced programming classes, you can write, let's say, a tic-tac-toe program or something, and it could be every bit of, a few hundred lines, or it could be 50, depending on how you write it. You can do the exact same thing with, let's say, 500 lines of code and you just do the exact same thing, but a lot more advanced programming techniques with maybe 50 or 100 lines of code, depending on how you do things and what your program's about. So that just takes practice, experience, and trial and error for the most part. But this is the program loop list. So feel free to play around with it for 8. Now there is one issue here. What if I did 8 and 8? It's just going to do 8. What if I did 9 and 8? Well, my loop won't run at all because 9 is not less than 8. What if I did Bob? Well, it's not an integer. It's going to crash. So you probably could throw in a couple of things there to make sure that it's an integer. Do a little if check. That wouldn't be a bad practice there. But always, whenever we do a project or program, look for things you could add to it, change, and that's really the only way to get better. Always try to improve and add more stuff to things. But that's the project. If you have any issues or complaints or questions, feel free to let me know.